I've been married to Laura for almost 7 years, and I thought we had a solid relationship. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but lately something felt off. It started small. Little things she did that made me question whether everything was as it seemed. I'd call her during the day and she'd be short with me, sounding distracted. When I'd ask her about her day, she'd give me the same vague responses. I tried to brush it off as work stress, but deep down, I felt annoying unease. One night I came home from work late and she was out. She said she had to meet a friend for dinner. At first I was fine with it. I encouraged her to enjoy her time, but as the hours passed, I started to feel a knot in my stomach. She didn't text or call to check in, which was unusual. When she finally walked through the door around midnight, she seemed off, a little too cheerful, a little too eager to brush off my concern. Then a few days later, I reached for her purse to grab my keys and something caught my eye. Receipt slipped out, crumpled and partially hidden. My heart sank when I saw the restaurant name. It was the place where we used to celebrate our anniversaries. The date on the receipt showed it was just a couple of nights before. I turned it over and I nearly choked when I saw the total: 2 dinners, 2 drinks. My mind raced. Who was she with? I confronted her that night. "Laura, I found this in your purse," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I handed her the receipt and she glanced at it, her face going pale. "Oh, that's nothing," she said quickly, snatching it from my hands and shoving it back in her purse. "I had dinner with a coworker. It was just a friendly catch-up. You know how stressful work can be." My mind was racing. I recognized the waiter's name on the receipt. He was a guy from her office, someone she had mentioned a few times before. I pressed on. "A friendly catch-up. You didn't mention it was dinner for two." She rolled her eyes, the familiar bitchy tone creeping into her voice. "You're being ridiculous. It's not like that. Just because I didn't tell you every little detail doesn't mean I'm cheating." Something in me snapped. The anger surged and I couldn't hold back. "I'm not being ridiculous, Laura. This is a lie and you know it." Her expression shifted, morphing from defensive to angry. "You're acting like a jealous lunatic. I don't have to report every single move I make to you. You need to relax." I stood there, dumbfounded. The woman I thought I knew was suddenly a stranger. How could she lie so easily, so brazenly? My heart raced, and I felt lost in a whirlwind of emotions. I loved this woman, but I suddenly felt the foundation of our entire relationship crumbling beneath me. The confrontation was a mix of shouting and tears, both of us digging into wounds we had avoided for too long. She stuck to her story, even as I laid out my suspicions. I couldn't believe how cold she was being, dismissing my feelings like they were nothing. In that moment, I realized she had been deceiving me for some time. I felt a mixture of betrayal, anger, and an overwhelming sadness that threatened to swallow me whole. In the aftermath of our fight, I was left alone in a house that felt foreign. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, nor could I ignore the sinking realization that my marriage was in jeopardy. I spent the night tossing and turning, replaying our argument in my mind. I thought about how I would move forward. Could I forgive her if she was indeed cheating? Did I even want to? The next day, I woke up feeling like a different person. The shock was still there, but it was now mingled with a sense of clarity. I realized I had to make a decision, one that would change everything. I started planning how I would confront her again, this time with a strategy in mind. I needed to uncover the truth and decide whether I could continue living in a lie or if I needed to fight back. As I sat there, staring at the empty coffee cup in my hands, I felt the walls closing in. What had started as a simple doubt had spiraled into a full-blown crisis. I knew I had to dig deeper into what was happening behind the scenes in our marriage. Little did I know the path I was about to take would be tangled with intrigue, revenge, and a quest to reclaim my dignity. The day after my explosive confrontation with Laura, I felt like I was in a fog. I had to figure things out, but my mind was racing. I began by doing what I had avoided for so long. I started observing her habits. I watched how she interacted with her phone, the way she left the house in a hurry, and the little lies she told about her whereabouts. The more I paid attention, the more I felt like I was piecing together a puzzle that had been scrambled for months. A week passed since that night of shouting and accusations. During that time, Laura continued with her usual routine, going to work, hitting the gym, and having girls' nights that she insisted were nothing to worry about. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. I started digging deeper into her social media. It was a rabbit hole I hadn't wanted to explore, but desperation drove me. I logged onto her Facebook and scrolled through her friends. I noticed a guy named Mark, who had been commenting on her posts more frequently. He had a friendly demeanor in his profile pictures, a typical bro type with a charming smile. I found myself feeling uneasy every time I saw his name. I clicked on his profile and saw they had mutual friends and had interacted in the past, but recently their exchanges seemed flirtatious. I felt my stomach churn as I read their banter. What had been harmless jokes now felt like a blatant red flag. I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time with more evidence. I wanted to catch her in a lie to expose the truth. I knew I had to be strategic about it. So I began to take notes, documenting her late nights and vague responses. I even started keeping a record of her interactions with Mark, noting down dates and times of their exchanges. I felt like a detective, piecing together a case of infidelity. One evening, I decided to follow her. It felt like a breach of trust, but I was at a breaking point. Laura had told me she was going out with friends, but I had a gut feeling she was meeting Mark. I waited until she left, and then I got in my car and followed her. My heart raced as I drove a few blocks behind her, hoping my suspicions were wrong yet desperate to uncover the truth. As I trailed her to a restaurant, my palms turned sweaty. The place was dimly lit, and I parked a safe distance away. I could see her through the front window, laughing animatedly. It took everything in me not to walk in and confront her right then and there, but I wanted to see who else was with her. A few minutes later, the door opened, and I saw Mark walk in, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Laura. The way he leaned in close to her, whispering something that made her laugh, sent a jolt of rage through me. I felt like I had been kicked in the gut. The pieces fell into place, all those late nights, the change in her behavior, the vague excuses. My heart pounded as I realized I was witnessing my worst nightmare unfold before me. They sat at a booth in the corner, and I watched as they shared a dessert. Leaning into each other, their chemistry undeniable. I could barely breathe. Every laugh Laura let out felt like a dagger to my heart. This wasn't just a dinner with a coworker. It was a date, a betrayal. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I forced myself to stay composed. I had to wait for the right moment to confront her, the moment when I could lay everything bare. After they finished eating, Laura stood up, and I quickly ducked down in my seat, praying she wouldn't spot me. I watched as they walked out together, and when they reached the parking lot, I saw them kiss, a brief peck that felt more intimate than anything I'd shared with her in months. My world shattered in that moment. I waited for them to leave before I drove home, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I felt sick to my stomach. I was filled with a mixture of rage, sadness, and betrayal. How could she do this to me? I thought of all the moments we had shared, the plans we had made, and it all felt like a cruel joke. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, replaying the scene in my mind. I felt a burning desire for revenge. I didn't want to just confront her. I wanted to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. I didn't know how, but I was determined to find a way to expose her lies and her betrayal. I needed to reclaim my dignity and show her that I wouldn't be the fool in this situation. The next day, I got to work. I began thinking about how I could turn the tables. I didn't want to just confront her with anger and accusations. I wanted to catch her off guard. I thought about ways to gather more evidence, ways to make her realize the depth of her betrayal. I needed to play this carefully, like a game of chess, where every move counted. The stakes were high, and I was ready to reclaim control of the situation, even if it meant taking a dark path in the process. With my mind swirling in a cocktail of rage and determination, I knew I had to devise a solid plan. I couldn't just jump into a confrontation, guns blazing. I had to make sure I had all my ducks in a row. I spent the next few days gathering evidence, meticulously compiling a timeline of her interactions with Mark, including the receipts I had collected and the social media exchanges that made my gut churn. I also began to dig deeper into Mark's life. I found him on social media and noted his job, his friends, and any mention of Laura. I didn't want to just confront her. I wanted to create a narrative that would expose her lies, something she couldn't just brush off with her usual dismissive attitude. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she had done, to realize that she had underestimated me. As the week dragged on, I struggled with the emotional turmoil. One part of me wanted to yell, to rage against the betrayal, while another part whispered that I should be calm and collected. The more I observed Laura, the more I noticed the little things: her phone always face down, her constant need for privacy. I realized I hadn't been imagining things. She was hiding something from me, and I was determined to uncover the truth. By the end of the week, I had everything in place. I felt ready, but I also felt a sense of dread. Confronting Laura wouldn't just be about revealing her affair, it would mean shattering what was left of my heart. I had to remind myself that I was doing this for my own sanity, to reclaim my self-respect. I couldn't continue living in a lie. The night of the confrontation, I decided it would be best to act casual. I planned a simple dinner at home, hoping to create an atmosphere that wouldn't throw her off guard. As I cooked, I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anxiety, anger, and a sliver of hope that this would finally bring clarity to my life. When she walked in, she greeted me with her usual cheerful smile, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. "Hey, honey, what's cooking?" she chirped, hanging her purse on the hook by the door. "Just some pasta," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Thought we could have a nice evening together." "Sounds great." She kissed me on the cheek, and I felt a pang of guilt wash over me. A part of me longed for the days when everything felt right between us, but I pushed those feelings aside, focusing on the task at hand. As we sat down for dinner, I made small talk, trying to gauge her demeanor. She seemed relaxed, her laughter ringing out like it did in the early days of our relationship. The facade was almost convincing, but I was determined to break through it. After we finished eating, I knew it was time. "Laura, can we talk about something?" I asked, my heart racing as I met her gaze. "Of course, what's up?" She leaned back in her chair, her expression shifting slightly as she sensed the seriousness in my tone. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone, showing her the evidence I had gathered. "I found something I think we need to discuss." I scrolled through the evidence, showing her the timeline of her interactions with Mark, the social media posts, and the receipts from the restaurant. At first, she laughed it off, her tone dripping with arrogance. "Come on, Brian. This is just ridiculous. I told you I had dinner with a coworker. You're really overreacting." I pressed on, the anger bubbling back up. "But it's not just dinner, Laura, it's all of this. You've been lying to me." I threw my hands in the air, frustration spilling over. "Why can't you just admit it?" Her expression shifted then from playful annoyance to sort of defensive anger. "You know what? Maybe you should just trust me instead of digging through my things and spying on me. You're acting paranoid." "Paranoid? Really? I'm the one who's been lied to, and you're calling me paranoid?" I took a step closer, feeling the intensity rise. "You think I'm just going to sit back and accept this? I saw you with him, Laura. I followed you to that restaurant. I saw you kiss him." Silence filled the room as she processed what I had just said. Her face turned pale, and for the first time I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "You did what? You followed me?" "Damn right I did. You've been treating me like a fool, and I won't let you get away with it any longer." Her defensive wall crumbled, and I could see the gears in her head turning. Okay, I'll admit I went to dinner with Mark, but it didn't mean anything. It was just a friendly outing." "Just a friendly outing? You can't be serious. You're sitting here telling me that after I caught you in a lie, and you expect me to believe you?" I shouted, feeling the weight of betrayal crashing down around me. She finally broke down, her bravado fading as she realized the gravity of the situation. "Brian, please, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't think you'd find out. Didn't think I'd find out." I echoed, my voice trembling with rage. "Laura, this isn't about whether or not I would find out. This is about trust, about respect. You shattered everything we built." For a moment she looked vulnerable, her usual dismissive attitude replaced by desperation. "I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It was a lapse in judgment, I swear." But her words felt hollow. I could see the cracks in her facade, the realization that I was serious. This wasn't just a conversation anymore, this was a reckoning. "Do you even realize what you've done?" I've dedicated my life to building this marriage and you threw it away for some thrill. I felt tears stinging my eyes. I can't forgive you for this, Laura. I don't even know if I can look at you the same way ever again. The room fell into a heavy silence, both of us grappling with the weight of our words. I felt the finality of the moment, the undeniable truth that our lives would never be the same. I had pulled back the curtain on her deception, but at what cost? In that moment, I realized I had to make a choice: to continue the battle for a marriage that felt irrevocably broken, or to reclaim my power and walk away from the lies. Whatever path I chose, there was no turning back. In the aftermath of our confrontation, I could feel the air between us thick with tension, tangible, almost suffocating. Laura's bravado had evaporated, replaced with a haunting vulnerability I had never seen before. As we stood across the table from each other, our shared history felt like a fragile glass sculpture, shattered into a million jagged pieces that reflected the weight of our broken trust. "I can't do this, Brian," she finally said, her voice trembling. "I can't lose you." "Then why did you risk it all?" I shot back, frustration spilling from my lips. "You made your choice and now you want to pretend it didn't happen. This isn't just a mistake, Laura. You actively chose to betray me. You chose him." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she took a step back, her hands shaking. "I never meant for it to get this far. I was confused and I thought it was just harmless fun." "I didn't think you'd ever find out." "Harmless fun?" I echoed incredulously. "You think lying to your husband and sneaking around is harmless? You've disrespected everything we've built together." "I'm sorry," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Please, let's talk about this. I love you, Brian. I need you to understand that it wasn't about you. It was about me feeling lost. I didn't mean to hurt you." Her words should have struck a chord within me, but instead they only fueled my anger. I had spent years being the supportive husband, putting in the effort and love she needed. And yet here we were, with her justifying her betrayal like it was some minor lapse in judgment. "I'm done talking, Laura," I said, my voice steady but laced with pain. "You've made your choices and you need to face the consequences. I don't know if I can trust you again after this. I don't even know if I want to." I watched as her expression shifted from pleading to defensive. "So, what do you want? To end our marriage just because of a mistake? You can't be serious." I couldn't help but feel the sting of her words. "A mistake? Is that what you call it? This isn't a slip-up, Laura. This is a betrayal of everything we've stood for. I'm not going to just pretend it didn't happen. You need to understand how serious this is." The anger surged in me. I felt like an outsider in my own life, watching as the woman I loved tried to salvage what was left of our marriage with flimsy excuses. The trust had been shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be rebuilt. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart, knowing that I had to make a tough decision. "I need some space," I said finally, each word heavy on my tongue. "I can't think straight right now and I don't want to make any rash decisions, but I can't stay here, not tonight." Her eyes widened in shock. "You're leaving? You can't just walk away from our life." "I don't know what else to do," I replied, feeling a surge of sorrow. "I need time to figure out what I want. I can't keep pretending everything is okay when it's not." I grabbed my keys and walked out, the silence of the house engulfing me as I closed the door behind me. I stepped into my car, my heart pounding, feeling both liberated and crushed. I wasn't sure where I would go, but I needed to be away from her, away from the memories lurking in every corner of our home. In the following days, I moved into a small apartment, a temporary refuge filled with echoes of my loneliness. I spent the nights lying awake, my mind racing through a whirlwind of emotions: anger, despair, confusion, and betrayal. I felt like I was on a roller coaster without a safety harness, and I had no idea where it would lead. I immersed myself in my work, trying to escape the thoughts of what Laura was doing and how she was coping without me. I didn't reach out to her. I couldn't bear the thought of hearing her voice or seeing her face. I needed to distance myself from the pain she had caused, from the life we had shared that now felt like a distant dream. After a week, Laura reached out via text. "Can we talk? I miss you. Please, let's figure this out." I stared at my phone, my heart racing as a mixture of emotions fought for control. Part of me wanted to respond, to hear her out, to stand and face the mess we had made together. But another part of me screamed to keep my distance, to protect my heart. I waited a few days before deciding I had to confront her again, but this time on my terms. I wanted clarity and closure and perhaps a chance to lay my feelings bare. I needed to see if there was any possibility of healing or if I was simply prolonging the inevitable. When I finally agreed to meet her, we chose a coffee shop halfway between our homes. The familiar scent of roasted beans brought back memories, but I pushed them aside. As I walked in, I spotted her sitting at a table, nervously tapping her fingers on the surface. She looked up and offered a tentative smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you for meeting me," Laura said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I sat down across from her, studying her face for any signs of sincerity. "You said you wanted to talk." "I did," she replied, taking a deep breath. "I've had time to think and I know I messed up. I'm so sorry for everything." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but I couldn't let my emotions sway me. "Sorry doesn't change what happened, Laura. You can't just take it back. You broke my trust." I know," she said, her voice trembling. "But I want to fix this. I love you, Brian. I never meant to hurt you. I made a terrible mistake, and I want to do whatever it takes to prove that to you." I felt a wave of conflicting emotions wash over me. Hearing her say she loved me stung, given the gravity of her actions. Love isn't just words, it's actions. What does fixing this even mean? How do I know you won't hurt me again? "I'll cut all ties with Mark, I promise," she said, desperation creeping into her tone. "I'll do anything you ask. I just need a chance to show you that I can be the wife you deserve." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of her plea. Could I trust her words? Could I take the leap back into this relationship knowing what she had done? I had to admit that a small part of me still loved her, but another part of me screamed to run far away from the hurt she had caused. "I need to think," I said finally, my voice firm. "You broke my trust and it's going to take time to rebuild it if that's even possible. I can't promise you anything right now." Her face fell, but she nodded. "I understand. Just please don't give up on us. I want to fight for our marriage." As we parted ways, I felt the heaviness of uncertainty hanging over me. I knew I had a difficult decision ahead, one that could change the course of my life. I had to figure out if I could forgive her, if I could rebuild what had been broken, or if it was time to walk away altogether. The road ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain. I wouldn't let her betrayal define me. I would reclaim my power, one way or another. In the days that followed our coffee shop conversation, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. I was torn between lingering love and the profound hurt Laura had inflicted upon me. Each day was a battle, and I spent my nights tossing and turning, replaying every moment of our relationship in my mind. The memories would flood back, both good and bad, and I often found myself feeling paralyzed by indecision. Laura reached out frequently, sending me texts that were a mix of apologies and heartfelt messages about how much she missed me. Part of me longed to respond, to reconnect with the woman I had loved so fiercely. But every time I looked at her messages, I felt that sharp stab of betrayal, reminding me of what she had done. I wasn't ready to dive back into the emotional turmoil of our relationship, and I didn't know if I ever would be. I decided to seek advice from a trusted friend, Jake. He had been there for me during my marriage and was the kind of guy who wasn't afraid to tell me the hard truths. Over a couple of beers at our favorite pub, I laid it all out: the affair, the confrontation, the heartache. I watched as his brow furrowed in concern. "Man, that's brutal," he said, shaking his head. "I can't believe she would do that to you, but you have to think about what you want, not just about her. You deserve better." "I know, but it's complicated," I replied, staring into my glass. "I still love her, but how can I ever trust her again? What if she does it again?" Jake leaned back in his chair, contemplating. "You need to set boundaries. If she wants to come back, she has to prove that she's worthy of your trust. It's not just about saying she's sorry, it's about actions. You can't go back to the way things were. You need to rebuild from the ground up if that's even what you want." His words struck a chord. I realized that I had been so focused on the pain that I hadn't considered a clear path forward. It was time to approach this carefully, with intention. I needed to put my foot down, to assert what I wanted and needed, and to see if Laura was willing to meet me halfway. Armed with this clarity, I decided to reach out to Laura. I asked her to meet me again, this time at a park where we used to walk our dog together. It felt familiar and safe, a place where we had shared laughter and love before the betrayal had shattered our world. When I arrived, Laura was already there, pacing nervously. She looked up as I approached, and I could see the mixture of hope and fear in her eyes. "Hey," she greeted me softly, and I could hear the tremor in her voice. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my own voice steady. As I took a seat on a nearby bench, "I've been thinking a lot about everything. We need to talk about what comes next." "Okay," she said, her expression shifting to one of determination. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes to fix this." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "First, I need you to understand that I can't just jump back into things like nothing happened. I need time, and I need you to be completely honest. No more lies, no more excuses." "I promise," she said, her eyes pleading. "I want to be better. I want you to feel safe with me again." "Good," I said, feeling a bit of tension ease from my shoulders. "I also need you to cut all ties with Mark. No texting, no social media connections. If we're going to rebuild this, I can't have his presence looming over us." She nodded, looking serious. "I'll do it. I'll block him, delete any messages. I won't let him come between us again." "Also, I think we should consider couples counseling," I added. "If we truly want to move forward, we need help navigating this. We can't do it alone." "I agree," she said, a glimmer of hope returning to her eyes. "I'll find a therapist and we can figure it out together." I felt a hesitant sense of relief at her willingness to cooperate. It was a step, albeit a small one, towards rebuilding what had been broken. But I also knew that this was just the beginning. Words were one thing. Actions would be the true test of her commitment to making things right. We exchanged a few more thoughts about our next steps, and I could feel the weight of the conversation settling between us. I wanted to believe that we could work through this, but I also knew that there were no guarantees. As we parted ways, I felt a mix of hope and trepidation. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, and I had to be prepared for anything. I couldn't put my heart on the line without knowing that she was fully invested in the process. Over the next few weeks, I focused on myself. I went to the gym, started reading self-help books, and even took up meditation to help clear my mind. I wanted to be in a good place, mentally and emotionally, no matter what happened with Laura. I began to realize that, regardless of the outcome, I needed to regain my sense of self-worth and independence. Laura was following through on her promises. She blocked Mark on social media, and we began attending couples counseling sessions together. It was a surreal experience, sitting across from her and a therapist, trying to unpack the layers of our relationship, but I felt it was necessary. In those sessions, we were forced to confront the pain and hurt, the underlying issues that had led her to seek comfort elsewhere. I saw Laura opening up in ways I had never witnessed before, and while it was uncomfortable, it felt like an essential step toward healing. But as the days turned into weeks, I also sensed that old patterns were difficult to shake. Even with her efforts to be transparent, I found myself second-guessing her, wondering if she was still hiding something. The seeds of doubt were hard to erase completely, and I often caught myself spiraling into suspicion. Yet there were moments of connection, laughter, shared memories, glimmers of the love that had once defined us. I found myself questioning if it was enough to rebuild our foundation. I sincerely hoped that this journey would lead us to a place of understanding and forgiveness, but uncertainty loomed large in my heart. As I sat in my apartment one night, reflecting on our progress, I thought about what I truly wanted. Was I willing to forgive? Could I let go of the pain and step back into a relationship that had once been filled with love? Or was it time to accept that sometimes, even love can't heal all wounds? Those questions weighed heavily on me as I moved forward, uncertain of what lay ahead. I had taken steps toward healing, but I wasn't sure if they were enough to repair the damage that had been done. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the lessons I had learned about myself, love, and the importance of trust. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself in a state of flux, oscillating between hope and despair. The counseling sessions continued, and while they were sometimes painful, they also provided an opportunity for honest communication that had long been absent from our relationship. Laura was making a genuine effort to change, and I could see that she was trying to take responsibility for her actions. There were moments when I felt proud of her, times when she would share her vulnerabilities, or when she'd express her remorse without defense. But other moments still felt like walking on eggshells. It was hard to shake the memories of her betrayal, and I often found myself wondering if I would ever fully trust her again. One evening, after a particularly intense counseling session, we returned home, and the weight of the day hung heavily in the air. I could sense that Laura was feeling the strain as well. We sat in the living room, the familiar silence enveloping us. I turned to her, ready to voice the chaos in my mind. "Laura, I've been thinking a lot about everything. I want to believe that we can rebuild what we had, but I also need to be honest about my feelings." I began, my heart racing. She nodded, her expression serious. "I know it hasn't been easy for you or for me. I've made mistakes, but I'm committed to making this right. I love you, Brian. I appreciate that, but love alone isn't enough," I replied, feeling a mixture of hope and skepticism. "I need to see that you're serious about changing, not just for me, but for yourself. I need reassurance that you're not going to fall back into old habits." Her eyes widened slightly, and I could see her taking my words to heart. "I understand. I'm working on myself, and I want to be a better partner. I don't want to lose you again." We talked late into the night, discussing boundaries, expectations, and the future. It was a conversation we had had countless times before, but this felt different. It felt like we were both genuinely trying to understand where we stood and what we needed from one another. In the weeks that followed, I made a conscious effort to be mindful of my own feelings. I attended therapy myself, wanting to process the betrayal and find a way to move forward. I learned that healing isn't linear. There would be good days and bad days, and that was okay. I was learning to reclaim my identity, separate from the turmoil of our relationship. Laura, too, began to show signs of growth. She started to engage in activities that brought her joy, independently of our relationship. She reconnected with friends and began exploring her passions. It was refreshing to see her take steps toward becoming a more fulfilled person. As summer rolled around, I suggested a weekend getaway to a cabin in the woods, a chance for us to reconnect in a different environment. We hadn't taken a trip together in a long time, and I felt a flicker of excitement at the thought. The weekend was beautiful. We hiked, cooked meals together, and even shared moments of laughter that felt reminiscent of the early days of our relationship. There was something healing about being surrounded by nature, away from the pressures of everyday life. For the first time in a while, I felt a sense of peace. On our last night there, we sat on the porch, watching the sun set behind the trees. The sky was painted in hues of orange and purple, casting a warm glow over everything. I turned to Laura, and for the first time I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. "I'm really glad we did this," I said, my voice steady. "Being here with you feels different, it feels good." Laura smiled back, her eyes shining. "I've missed this, Brian, I've missed us." As I stared into her eyes, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding trust would take time and effort. But for the first time, I felt like we were moving in the right direction. I was willing to give it a chance, to see where this path would lead us. That night, as we lay in bed together, I wrapped my arms around her and held her close. I could feel her heartbeat against mine. There was a sense of comfort in the familiarity, and as I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of gratitude that we were both willing to fight for our relationship. I learned through this journey that love is not just about the good times. It's also about facing the darkness together. It's about vulnerability, honesty, and the willingness to grow. Relationships can endure pain, but it takes a commitment from both partners to work through the aftermath of betrayal. As I reflected on everything that had happened, I realized that I was no longer defined solely by Laura's actions. I was reclaiming my power, finding my voice, and learning to trust my instincts. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready to face it with an open heart and a newfound strength. In the end, I learned that healing is a journey, not a destination. It's about moving forward, even when the past lingers like a shadow. We had a long road ahead, but for the first time in a while, I felt optimistic about our future. And that, in itself, was a victory.